Good morning, good afternoon, good night to Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to a very special emergency broadcast of Marvel Movie Talk. There's emergency news coming out of D23. Our agents in Brazil have given us some new intel, which we will be reporting on very shortly. As always, I am Christian Bladt. Next to me is the one, the only Count Eric Conner.
Greetings and salutations.
And down below, of course, our Brooklyn boy, just like Steve Rogers, David Brody. Thank you for being here, sir.
Of course.
So we're going to dive into that news in a moment, but because of the simple fact that it is Veterans Day, I wanted to take a moment and talk about some of the Marvel characters who have served specifically this country. We know who have been Black Ops, Canadian operatives, and all sorts of things like that. But we're going to just talk about a few of them. I have a couple of honorable mentions, characters that you don't necessarily think about their service. The first would actually be Charles Xavier, who served with his stepbrother, Cain Marco. And it was while they were serving in Korea that he became the Juggernaut. As you can see in the image I'm sharing with our visual audience, there's that ruby stone of Satorak, or however you say it. And he became the Juggernaut shortly thereafter. So he served, which is not necessarily what everybody thinks about when they think of old Chuck. Is it, Mr. Conner?
You don't necessarily look at him and immediately go into like Gomer Pyle territory, no. But I do appreciate that he did serve this great country of ours, and we all respect his whatever sacrifice he may have made. But that's not how he got paralyzed, is it?
No. That's much later. Yeah.
Okay.
He knew he was a mutant who's able to still walk around. It factors into their backstory, and I don't know what retconning has done, but Reed Richards and Ben Grimm met in college, and then after college, they served. And the quote that I have here, you can see Reed Richards saying, "It seems we had hardly had time to pack away our diplomas before you became a Marine fighter ace over Okinawa and Guadalcanal." And obviously, that part, I honestly, I don't know, because it's been so long. As like, can you have them existing in 2024 or whatever it is in the Marvel universe and have them still being veterans of World War II? That's probably something you remember about their backstory, Brody, though. It's not like they never talk about it, at least when we were reading in the 80s, right?
Yeah, I remember it. I'm just thinking, if they're coming from an alternate universe in the MCU, then timeline-wise, they could have served in their World War II.
Oh, there you go.
Because they're not coming from the 616. You know, it's no different than Magneto. He was a Holocaust survivor.
Correct.
But 30, 40 years from now, he'd have to be 200 years old, whatever. So,
which maybe he could be. I mean, they could always do that.
Be. Yeah. But when you're tied to historical events, at some point, it's not feasible unless you somehow warp the timeline or make him, immortal.
Right.
So yeah, I think the Fantastic Four just come from another. It's like Steve Rogers. Thankfully, they were able to just wake him up in the 2000s in the movies rather than wake him up in the 60s like in the comics.
Right.
So
yeah, right, exactly. It's just a variation on what they did so that he could be in the Avengers. Exactly. Go ahead.
Also too, I mean, if Xavier is fighting overseas, I feel like probably the tide of war could change quite a bit with a guy like that. I mean, I was thinking like the Watchmen, when Dr. Manhattan basically ended the Vietnam War in a handful of days.
Right.
And so
the difference is that Charlie wasn't aware of his telepathy at that point. I believe that's my understanding.
Because then what you're bringing up about the timeline, Brody, right? It's like you would have to tie yourself in knots to explain to explain away a lot of American history. So I feel like, who needs that mess of a plot mechanic?
Right, exactly. So let's move to our list proper, which starts with perhaps not the poster child for military service, but a character who it's very important. The impact of his time in Vietnam is Frank Castle, the Punisher. His tale in Vietnam was actually told in the later 80s in a couple of issues of the ongoing Vietnam series called The Nam, the Vietnam series. So that's a big part of him. And sort of we get the creation of the skull logo. And, he was he was obviously a wild man in the military, but it wasn't until organized crime killed his family that it really set him off the deep end. It was not his, his time in the service was not something you'd turn into an animated series. But at the same time, it could have been worse, is what I'm getting at in that moment. But there are, of course, a number of other characters that we want to shout out. And one of them would, of course, be Captain Marvel, but also prior to that, she was Captain Carol Danvers in the Air Force. And as the characters initially introduced in the late 60s in the Captain Marvel, as in Marvel series, she just works on an army base where he knows a few people. So that's where that character comes from. And I think that this is one where the movie version of her really does reflect her military service. There's other times where, like I had to kind of rack my brain to think of Professor X. I was like, I thought I remembered him serving at one point, and I did have to do a little bit of a deep dive. So that is, of course, Carol Danvers, and I think that she did do some like spy work as well in the comics, but we're just talking about, sort of prior to all of that. So a character that is going to heavily factor into our coverage today is Sam Wilson, who prior to taking up the mantle of Captain America had also had military service. There are some honorable mentions of other characters. We could talk about Rhodey, Flash Thompson from the Spider-Man comics. He also served. What were you going to say, Mr. Brody?
Well, I don't know about the Nick Fury in the movies because he's from the Ultimate Universe. But when Nick Fury was white, he was Sergeant Fury in the Howling Commandos, and he obviously had military service. I don't know if both Nick Furies have the same background, but I did want to mention that at one point, Nick Fury was a military man, and the comic book was about his military service. There you go.
Yes. Right, exactly. Who was, I'm sort of not really ranking these, but basically my number 2, of course, is Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos. And look, we could identify each member of the Howling Commandos. Dum Dum Dugan could get his whole episode. All right.
Yeah.
But I think that we'll just stick with Sergeant Fury, who, obviously after the war continued to serve his country as a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. And if we are going to do this, there is really, I don't know. I mean, I think that if we only did one, if we were like, hey, today is Veterans Day, let's talk about an important veteran that served the United States military. Of course, we're talking about Steve Rogers, Captain America. Get a little shout out from Bucky on Captain America #1. And this that we're showing our visual audience. This is the famous Captain America #1 where he's punching Hitler in the face. So that's the service that we come to expect from one Steve Rogers. I wanted to run through that list quickly, but Brody, you mentioned Nick Fury. Eric, do you have any thoughts on any of the characters that I highlighted? We talked about Sam Wilson. We talked about Carol Danvers. Frank Castle. It's a rosy red peaches and cream story there for old Frank Castle.
Yeah, I mean, except for Captain America, I mean, Captain Marvel, I mean, even the name obviously has a military rank in there. I thought they actually did a pretty solid job with like her military side. In terms of the world building of that part of Carol, I thought was actually pretty sharp. And then of course, was it Monica's mom as well?
Maria Rambeau.
Rambeau
Was also a pilot with her. Yes.
And as far as Nick Fury, I mean, obviously, the version of Nick Fury that David Hasselhoff played would have been in military because obviously when you want to represent the strength and power of a veteran, David Hasselhoff's the way to go over Samuel.
Yeah,
any day.
You can't hassle the Hoff.
You cannot hassle the Hoff, and
It
of course proves my theory. Germans love David Hasselhoff. Therefore, Germans love Nick Fury. So, thank you for that. Yeah, I know. I actually hadn't thought about that. If I had been thinking, I probably would have used a still of David Hasselhoff as Nick Fury.
But no, it would have been him eating the cheeseburger when he was drunk. The footage his daughter recorded.
Shout out to Kemi Egan. Her nephew is currently serving in the Navy. Thank you for their service. And we've got some some good friends saying hello, such as Ivan Soto, Sam Bibley saying you can't generate power for a punch with both feet off the ground like that. No body weight transfer. Come on, man. This is like 1941 and he's punching Hitler in the face. Let's just go from there, you know? So.
He could have leaped into that punch.
Right. That's
true.
like a Roman Reigns Superman punch, he calls it.
Also, one man super soldier punch is not my punch. So super soldier punch, I'm pretty sure he could take out Hitler. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. That is a nice strong punch. All right. So what we're here for, in addition to that, is I wanted to sort of do this quickly because over the weekend we got some more news out of D23 Brazil. Man, they love their D23s, don't they? So no problem for sharing the brand with our friends there in Brazil. But what we got to see was a new trailer for Captain America: Brave New World, which has some of the things that we saw earlier, but I think we're starting to get a little bit more feel for what the movie is. So we're going to do what we usually do here on the show, and that is we're going to show the trailer without any volume because my understanding is that it's the sound that makes it easily flagged by YouTube sharing copywritten content. So we're going to talk about it as we show it. And I will first ask Mr. Brody his thoughts as we take a look at Captain America: Brave New World in theaters Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2025.
There's a lot going on in the trailer. It's obviously an espionage-based movie.
Sure.
Isaiah Bradley has some secrets. They've locked him up maybe to keep him quiet. It looks like Harrison Ford, the president, has an assassination attempt.
Yeah.
And he becomes the Red Hulk so that he's, I guess, safe from assassination, except when he's Harrison Ford and gets shot, he'd be killed. But that's obviously why he does it. Captain America's new wings, I guess, are made of, I don't know if they're adamantium or what they're made out of, but they're cutting through airplanes now.
Yeah, there's possibly some vibranium, you know.
Yeah, vibranium, right?
A blend, maybe.
Yeah,
if they let him keep the vibranium. So
yeah,
that was impressive what he could do with the suit right there.
Yeah.
It's clear he's going to have to prove that he's worthy of being Captain America because, at some point, President Ross says, you're no Chris Evans. Chris Evans,
Right.
Steve Rogers.
Yeah,
right.
He is also no Chris Evans. Yeah.
He's also no Chris Evans, but he's a good actor in his own right. So he's going to have to prove himself. And then Giancarlo Esposito has a large role in this trailer. Previously, we'd only seen the back of his head and then a quick shot. So he's obviously going to be one of the. There he is, right there. Some people thought that was the leader, but that's clearly Giancarlo. It looks like an action-packed film. It looks to me really good, and I'm curious to see what the big mystery is, and if we do see the leader in this movie as rumored to be, because they didn't show him.
Right. It is heavily rumored. I agree with you, Brody. Yes.
Yeah. And Harrison as the Hulk looked really good. I love the reporter's line where she says they come in red now or something to that effect.
Yes.
So there was humor. So it looks good. The Sabra character is there as we've discussed, I think previously on this podcast, that they de-Jewed her, they de-Israeli'd her. So unfortunately that representation won't be there, but we'll see what they do with the character because they're not showing her in her traditional garb. So I don't know if they're going to make her a superhero or not, or just an agent. But the movie looks great. I'm more excited for this and the other movie we're going to talk about than I have been for Marvel movies in a while. So I think they did a great job with the trailer.
I definitely agree with that. And it does look like it's going to be, that showdown between Red Hulk and, well, I was going to call him Falcon, but Captain America, I think, is probably going to be worth the price of admission. Our buddy Husey is in the chat, and he has commented about this to me before, that if Falcon just shakes off being hit or thrown by Red Hulk, it's going to ruin the film, because Husey has made the point both on and off shows like this that Sam doesn't have the super soldier serum, so he's not as durable as Steve Rogers or as Isaiah Bradley or even John Walker. So it'll be interesting to see. I think he's just going to have to be faster, and he's going to have to fly around and all of that stuff. I want to give our buddy Eric Conner here a moment to also comment on what we see in this trailer. Obviously, we've talked about a previous trailer here for this, but Eric, as we watch this, what are your thoughts?
Well, listen, never would I be one to disagree with Husey. But the way they're making his suit look, he's becoming much more like Iron Man, from what I'm seeing here. And so you're right. It's like, one Red Hulk punch would turn into juice, basically. But I feel like the way they're at least marketing the suit, making us sort of understand where the character is now, is that he basically is the new version of Iron Man. Like it almost looks like he's covered almost head to toe. Maybe some of his neck is exposed, which I would probably, for me personally, protect my head and neck and upper body most. But that's my own limited engineering background. I think this trailer is really well put together. The flight scenes are kind of exciting. Like we have only had limited sort of dogfighting kind of moments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I even alluded to one in, I think, our last episode, where the opening of Falcon and Winter Soldier had this incredible scene with him in a plane. And so it feels like we're getting a fair amount of that, which I'm all here for. And I'm a little nervous. I know this one's been testing kind of the Valentine's Day release of it is a little concerning, I suppose. But I think when I'm watching this, it's kind of like they're not giving themselves much of a safety net. Like they're totally leaning hard into the Winter Soldier vibe, like espionage thriller, something a little more attuned to even like the 70s kind of feel, the kind of thrillers we had back then. And even like their use of titles, their use of cliches like, trust no one. It's like, yeah, okay, we've learned that lesson a lot. I think him in particular has learned that a lot. So I don't know if it bears repeating, but the truth is, like, there is enough interesting things in this that I mean, I can't imagine we're going to come out of that like with a reaction on par with, I don't know, Joker 2 or something. This is going to be good. I don't know if it'll be great. I think it is exciting that they've used some of the elements from the show that were interesting and maybe a little underserved. So I'm hoping this does have a bit of that Winter Soldier vibe, because that still to me is one of the like 5 best MCU films we've had.
Yeah, there are no shortage of people that I've talked to that say that Winter Soldier is their favorite MCU film, and I think wherever it ran, I think it's phenomenal. I prefer the first Avenger, but I also think that one's great. And I think that trying to capture that vibe is smart. That's a good approach. I wanted to comment on what Eric was talking about again for a visual audience. The font that they're using is not very superhero. It's very just, like all caps. Yeah, pun intended for Captain America. Didn't even mean it.
Ring the bell.
Yeah, well, I had to. All capitalized and just very simple, like white block printing on a black background. And it's like, yes, this is Captain America Brave New World, but it's not Captain America Brave New World, where it's all bright and shiny. I think that the showdown with Red Hulk is, again, what I think people will be talking about. And as it comes to Red Hulk, once again, Husey says, also, how did Red Hulk's hair turn black from gray, but then still have gray around the sides? Kind of makes the whole thing seem a little far-fetched, right?
That's the far-fetched part.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Husey, the American president, turning into what I have behind me, this gigantic behemoth, this hulking big red thing. But look, I think it's peak physical condition to turn into the Hulk. So all of a sudden his hair just looks a little bit better. Or perhaps he has just enough time to apply a dosage of Just for Men, like our friend Keith Hernandez.
I was thinking it's radiation with a Just for Men chaser. again, this idea of the blend. I think maybe that's the difference here.
I think you have to suspend disbelief when it comes to a giant, oversized red president. I think you just have to let it go sometimes.
I feel like we're going to have slight variation on that in January, but this is
I
not the
had
show to talk about that.
What? Huh?
I
January?
had a
What?
question. I had a question for you, gents. By the way, all right.
Yes,
So
sir.
here we've got Comrade Sabra.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this. Go ahead.
What was her accent, David? I mean, maybe you can educate me on
Mm.
your extensive knowledge of Europe and the Middle East.
Yeah, genetic European, Russian, Ukraine, the accent. It does not matter.
It's it's the Sokovian accent that Elizabeth Olsen had in Age of Ultron, and then never again.
Or Halle Berry's accent from X-Men.
Oh, yeah. I think you're not supposed to question the accent. I think you're just supposed to know she's from over there. Oh, she's got one of those. Oh, she's Europe. Listen, people can't find most countries on a map, so they're not going to question the. I mean, you and I are, but that's generic actress accent.
I'm fairly sure I couldn't find Oklahoma on a map. So,
it's the one that's got the little panhandle.
Okay, it is right next to Texas. I picked the wrong one. All right, I should have said,
Wyoming is a tough one for some.
That is a tough one. So
Delaware's the one that confuses everyone.
Without your glasses, you can't find it.
No,
you'll never find it. Exactly. No. So, I did want to talk to you guys though, because you did bring up, look, Sabra's not like this character that is, a huge presence in Marvel Comics. I remember reading stories with her, and I found it to be very interesting that, there's the short list of Jewish superheroes, but she was basically the Israeli Captain America is the best way to describe the way she appeared in the comics. And I think that the earliest draft of this script, she's not that yet. She's some kind of agent who possibly becomes that. So it's a little bit easier to talk about once we've actually seen it, but it's been very apparent that they took that away. And again, we have talked about it on the show before, but this seems like a more fitting time to actually have this conversation about the idea that, I think that from an economic standpoint, from, a Disney being skittish standpoint, I guess that there was a concern about having an Israeli superhero in the year 2025, but I don't know how qualified I am to really weigh in on this, because I'm not saying I approve of the decision. I'm just saying, like, okay, I understand the bean counters are like, oh, we're getting very nervous. But Eric, I want to ask you first, sort of your thought on, Brody, you used the term that I don't know if I could. They removed her Jewish identity. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. Someone I know would tell me that. Go ahead.
It's called high washing. That's what they're doing.
So, Eric, I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Mr. Cotter.
As my dog also protests in the background here.
Yeah,
it's tough. I mean, honestly, I know you didn't come here to hear our takes on the Middle East, and so I'm not about to start it now. Shira Haas is a terrific Israeli actress, and I'm excited that she's getting more international recognition. What's also really cool about her is, as in terms of casting, she is tiny. She is petite. And so I was just initially so excited to dare I say, have some representation. I know we've joked about this before with the exciting moment in Moon Knight, when it was like, you see him wearing a yarmulke and it's like, oh my God, dude, I feel seen. Right. Finally, Jewish representation in Hollywood. It took a long time. Just ask the Warner Brothers and the Goldwyn brothers. But I understand their concern. I think also what happens too is it takes the conversation away from the story in ways that it's just kind of like, okay, do you need that headache? But I mean, to change her ethnicity, and again, until we see how they explain it, if it's going to be our favorite trick of you hide the mouth. Yes, I am from Moscow, and I have always been Russian. I don't know how they're going to do it, but it's gonna cheapen a bit, maybe what could have been, but without reading the original draft, who knows what it was. It's dare I say a professional word, it's a bit icky that we even have to
Okay,
go there
yeah.
in 2024 and
you,
25.
you know what is contradictory to me is that Russia is invading Ukraine, right? Russia is to most people would say Russia is an evil situation right now. Most people. Yet Red Guardian and Black Widow have no problem being Russian and representative of the Russian country. Nobody edits them out of the movie because
Well,
we can't have Russians in the movie.
Red Guardian was Soviet, so he's reformed. I think is nothing's more American than that gut he has hanging out of his costume. But to your point, Brody, I understand what you're saying. That they. I think that this probably seemed easier to kind of, and Eric's referencing what we always talk about on The Simpsons is I'm rooting for the Atlanta Falcons before the Super Bowl. So to that end, though, do you feel? I feel like it's unrealistic to try to do that, especially to Red Guardian, right?
Yeah, he's not as marginalized. I mean, the whole point is that you took an Israeli hero and it was, it's easy. We'll just make some edits. But if, let's say, Storm was Israeli, they wouldn't have done that because they couldn't have done that. They did it because they could have. And I understand why they did it, but don't be hypocritical.
Right. I agree.
Right. If you're gonna say, and not you, but if you're gonna say, well, Red Guardian is 80s Russian and he's from a long time ago and it doesn't represent Russia, whatever. Okay. Who's to say that if Sabra was Israeli in the movie, it's a movie, and in that universe has nothing to do with this universe, and she may be against the government policies. So I just think it was unnecessary, but I understand it. But as Team Sabra, I have to take a little more notice of it, not offense, but notice and go, it's a shame, but maybe down the road they reveal her to be, who knows?
Well, that's what I was going to say is I wonder if the door's left open where it's like, okay, well, maybe, in a future film or series or wherever she might show up again, that is something they could do. And Eric, you're always the one to point out that Sabra, of course, is the number one brand of hummus in my household.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the important thing. So I wanted to just, take a moment, and I feel like when we see the movie, Valentine's Day, another romantic Valentine's Day for Eric and I after seeing Madam Web this calendar year. This might be a slight improvement.
I don't know how.
We can FaceTime with Brody. Well, except he has an Android, so never mind. All right. Well, Brody, we'll talk to you.
Oh, after. No. You can send me a link. I can do FaceTime on Android now. Yeah.
Perfect. So I want to talk about this poster, which is phenomenal. And we've seen the image of the Hulk punching Cap's shield in the earlier trailer, but now it's like officially the poster of it. And I have to shout out one of my friends through Geekscape because I had actually, I believe it was Justin, but I apologize for not being able to give the full credit. But there is actually inspiration for this poster from Captain America number 230, and it is a phenomenal, tremendous cover. It is basically the same as what we were just looking at, but of course it's the Green Hulk because it's he's going up against Bruce Banner, and I just sort of love the nice callback because in every way it's like, yes, we'll take this. And I don't know. What do you guys think when you see the poster? But then, of course, we've also got this this inspiration for the poster.
Well, I've seen this floating around, and it got me thinking when I first saw it. Super Soldier guy can take the brunt of the shield being slammed into him.
Sure.
I don't. The picture of Falcon, which is the wallpaper of this and the poster. I don't understand how Falcon. I understand the shield absorbs a lot of impact and spreads the power, the kinetic energy evenly over the shield. I get that, but the sheer force would move him about a mile. I don't know how they're going to explain or not explain how a Hulk can punch a thing you're holding and you're a human being, and somehow, the suit is going to, take the brunt. I don't see it. And that cover reminded me of why it's not feasible to me. Captain America, it looks like he's getting crunched, and he's a super soldier.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Ron Wilson and Bob Layton for the art on that image. Bob Layton did Iron Man for quite a while, but Ron Wilson's actually not someone I'm familiar with, and that it was a little bit of a surprise. And like because Sal Buscema does the interiors on that, so I of course just assumed that's who did it, and then I wanted to be able to give credit to be sure. So, what do you think when you see both of these images, Mr. Conner?
I have to admit, I don't think I've seen this cover before. And to the point though, I'm now curious. Like if I look through my old collection, because the 35-cent era definitely was when I started collecting, or even 25-cent. But so I might have it even floating around somewhere. I mean, I love this callback. One thing to consider is maybe Captain America's legs were both up. Along the lines of how he punched Hitler. So maybe that's the problem here. If he had his legs down, maybe he handled this punch. I don't know. Also, not to mention, it feels like the wall's going to do maybe even more damage to him, because at least one side is protected. The other side is just his face getting smushed. It's a great callback. Sorry.
If Cap was laying down and the Hulk like sort of jumped, then you'd get the cool visual of Cap going, like 100 feet down into like the rubble. So I think that they've only shown us a little bit of that fight sequence, and I can't wait to hear more.
Yeah, and it looks like
okay, go ahead. Sorry. Good. Well, Eric froze right as I gave him the talking stick back. I gave you the conch.
Yeah, his expression is well, he doesn't look terribly worried. Which one thing that's great about the comic cover is, well, he definitely looks like a guy who's getting punched by a Hulk. And Sam's kind of like, it's cool.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not too worried. I've had worse. Kemi, again, I keep hearing the movie is not testing well, but the trailer looks fantastic. I love the old world spy vibes it gives, but I'm concerned there are too many villains, which might be confusing. That's entirely possible. And Sam Bibley learned right now that the president becomes Red Hulk, and he thinks that will definitely be funny. And, Ivan Soto did remind us the Wakandans made Sam's new suit in Falcon and Winter Soldier. So probably some more upgrades. I do think Stark Tech could be involved. And Daniel Drew thought that the leader is the guy in the hat. Would the leader be Giancarlo Esposito, or is he a different character, Brody?
Different character.
Okay. Because, I thought that the leader was going to be played by the guy who turns into the leader in the Ed Norton Hulk.
Apparently, that's what I heard too. Yes.
Yeah, but
I hope so too. He's a really interesting actor. So
it's a whole comic book plot they're bringing to the screen, and I can already predict that you'll be seeing that in March in the Geekscape Book Club. But I don't want to read that story before the movie. And Ivan Soto makes a point. We do get to see the new Falcon because remember we got to know him on the TV series, so we're going to get to see that. Let's see. Ladastro says some Air Force One movie vibes. I mean, if at some point Thunderbolt Ross says, "Get off my plane," I think that's what we're all hoping for, and he does like a Hulk punch, and like that's what gets him off the plane.
Also, if he shoots a guy with a saber, not Sabra, but saber,
not a Sabra, yeah.
That would
next
be great too.
He'll be Red Han Solo Hulk. Yeah, exactly. Why go Red Hulk at all, Ivan Soto? We're going to see.
Well,
I think
there was an opportunity to say Hulk Solo. You kind of blew that one.
Oh, well, that's all right.
Why are you making her feel bad?
No, we hammered that out in the room. This is a collaboration, Brody.
Right. We're like the She-Hulk writers room.
Yeah, right, exactly. Let's see. So Ladastro says, isn't it supposed to be a Russian-Israeli accent? I've heard they did some changes with real-world current events. Yeah, that's sort of what we're talking about. And we're going to see what that accent is. Because, by the way, the snippet of the accent that we hear in the trailer may not be the accent when the film is actually in theaters. Who knows what kind of testing they're going to feel they need to do, how much additional dialogue recording. And by the way, Daniel Drew liked me using the phrase bean counters. Well, that's somebody has to do it, but in any case, I'm excited for this. And all right, Ivan, you're making a point. People can't lose their accents. Like they explained how Wanda did. Her accent is so bad in Age of Ultron. I'm glad that they got rid of it. You're missing the point on that.
You can't lose an accent in a year. Like it takes a while, unless you put a spell on herself.
Right.
Yeah.
The D accent spell.
Yeah,
So-
right. She put a sigil for the accent. You know.
So our buddy Sam Bibley is using some 10-cent words here, and he's saying it's symbolic of how the brute violence of the classical state is outmoded against the fusion of corporate and state powers and technology represented by the new Captain America. You know, that statement should have just been the trailer, Sam Bibley. It's like, would you like to see this movie? Great. It's this, but
That's
he
the opening
also added-
title scroll.
Yeah. Hashtag Tech Bros.
It's going to be like a Star Wars opening crawl. It's going to be
The
everywhere.
taxation of the
but-
Trade Federation.
Yeah, and Sam Bibley also adds that this Cap appears as the synthesis of Iron Man and Cap emerging from their dialectical encounter in Civil War. So thank you for the insight, Sam Bibley. So, and I guess Giancarlo is Sidewinder, and
Yeah.
does that mean we're getting the Serpent Society? We will see what we get and all of that. I've read an article that I haven't clicked on because I'm trying to avoid whatever it is, but something about the toys for Red Hulk gives some backstory as to how he becomes the Red Hulk. So I'm things like that. I try to look, if I can avoid it, I will. But if I see
The Happy
it,
Meal toys from half a year ago, I think. I mean, look how much story is in this wonderful Sabra.
Yeah. And thank you, Ladastro. Yes, Tim Blake Nelson is the actor whose name was not anywhere near the tip of my tongue. He played the leader in The Hulk, and he has a credit in Brave New World. So thank you for that. So in addition to that revelation out of D23, I think is the scrappy little upstart movie that we're all getting a chance to talk about a little bit more now. And that, of course, is Thunderbolts with the asterisk. And Eric, I know you have a little bit more of a time crunch, so I want to let you first kind of chime in and talk about, as we'll start to play the trailer in a moment. I'm just showing some stills. Your thoughts on sort of what we've seen from Thunderbolts over the weekend, which has there's some crossover with what we had seen previously.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I felt like they hit a lot of this kind of in the other trailer, but definitely maybe it's just the length of this. This is like a 3.5 minute sneak preview, and I mean what they're going after does come into focus a little bit more. It does have a touch of Suicide Squad, a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy, too. That in terms of its tone. It has the Toadie's Possum Kingdom playing, which
I knew you would mention it. I knew that my hashtag 90s bro would shout out Possum Kingdom by the Tonys.
Yeah, I mean, it's after having Space Hogs in the meantime in Guardians 3, it's getting me excited for eventually Crash Test Dummies making their way to the Marvel Universe.
Could you imagine, by the way, that trailer?
What-
Once there was this boy who... Oh, my God.
And by the way, doesn't he say they're driving through Oklahoma here? So apparently they found Oklahoma on the map.
No, they were looking for Wyoming. So they also couldn't read a map, Brody.
That's correct. Well, you got a Russian guy driving, so probably doesn't know the layout.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the joy of these actors. I mean, again, we've talked many times, right, about the talent MCU gets. And so having like David Harbour looking like he's having the best time ever, I guess after, trying his hand, pun intended, as Hellboy, I think now he found this role that's just sort of, he's, have really just is making this character pop. I mean, I think it's kind of cool, like seeing some of the side characters that we didn't necessarily know we needed more of pop up again. And then Ghost, Taskmaster, we didn't really get much of a great sample of either of them before. So they're, to me, the characters that's like, well, I don't know if we needed them. This trailer isn't giving me much of anything about them. So I don't know if they're just going to be the red shirts of the Thunderbolts and get taken out of the picture relatively early in the film. But I I feel like there's maybe other smaller supporting characters I would have liked to see in their stay. But the Fab Four front and center with the two of them, John Walker, I really like what was it Wyatt Russell, is that his
Wyatt
name?
Russell, yes, sir.
Yeah, I
Wyatt Earp.
Wyatt Earp, Wyatt E. Russell. I like what he brings to this. I enjoyed him in Winter Soldier. I'm sorry, in Falcon and Winter Soldier. I absolutely adore Julia Louis-Dreyfus. So any chance to see her, and she's she's clearly chewing the scenery quite well. But I think this one looked fun. I mean, I think the action of it, we'll see. I was never particularly impressed with the Deadpool action personally, but I found it was such a fun movie. In some ways, I didn't care. I'm glad that we have a version of Peter from Deadpool in the form of Bob, although it looks
Yes.
like Bob might have some powers.
Bob has a lot going on. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of speculation about Bob, which we'll ask what about Bob when we're in the new year.
And the line about what kind of super serum did you get? That was a solid joke. I think I'm curious if you guys found that funny or not, but
No, I
I'm
did. Yeah,
impressed.
agreed. Yeah.
Fancy.
So this one, listen, they definitely sort of like the New World Order, like they're definitely a Brave New World. I'm sorry. I feel like they're trying something specific with this to separate it from the other Marvel films. We'll see if it lands or not, but I'm cautiously optimistic on this one.
Yeah, I think that we're all kind of in the same proverbial boat, as it were. And the comparison to the Suicide Squad, in particular, the James Gunn
Yeah.
one, has been out there a lot. But you're absolutely right. There is a little bit of a Guardians of the Galaxy feel to it. Sort of the period where they sort of end up together and working together, and it's not what any of them was planning on. And I definitely kind of like that vibe. As you watch this, Mr. Brody, what are some of the things that stand out to you?
Well, I still don't know how you take a handgun and shoot the back of a Humvee to make it flip from the back, and even though you're in front of it, I can't figure that part out. Other than that, I thought the limo joke was great. I'm surprised they put it in the trailer, but that tells me there's other stuff they didn't put in the trailer. But him
Correct,
hitting
yeah.
the switches was very funny. I'm curious as to what's going on with Bucky, because I'm going to call him Bucky. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Because he seems to be helping them, but then he shoots at them. So I don't know if
Yeah.
he's brainwashed. We don't know that. So there's a little bit of intrigue there. I love the length of the trailer. I love the 3 hours, as Eric pointed out. It was, it's like they wanted to show me a lot, and I enjoyed it. To me, it felt like a buddy cop movie. It felt like Guardians of the Galaxy, 100%.
Right.
Where they're like, all right, we're taking a road trip. Like, where are we going? I don't know, but we're doing it together. But then they're also going to break apart. I love that they rented out Avengers Tower, which is another nod to the fact that there are no more Avengers at this point, that she
Right.
just took the tower over. I'm wondering if we'll see Easter eggs in the tower of things maybe that were left there by accident, or a dent from the elevator when Hulk was, whatever. I loved it. I liked this trailer a lot more than the Captain America one, because it's pretty clear cut what's going on, except for Bob. Whereas, as Cammie pointed out, although there's a lot of intrigue and there's a lot of action in the Captain America one, who is the villain? What's exactly going on?
Right.
Whereas, although we don't know their mission, we know that there is a villain, and I like not knowing who the villain exactly is, just that they're going after something. And the fact that they were able to show 3 minutes of action and never show what Bob becomes or what might be was interesting to me, because it almost looks like they're going after Bob. Because
It's entirely
their
possible,
mission
yeah.
doesn't include Bob, but yet
Yeah.
Bob's in the movie. So whatever they're doing, it's either to rescue Bob or stop Bob, which is
Right.
going to be a difficult thing to do. So I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, no, it definitely looks great, and I'm excited for this. I'm excited for both of these movies, and there's also a full slate of Marvel television coming up, and I want to make sure that we include the chat as part of our conversation. But Eric Conner, I know you have places to be. We appreciate you making time for us today. Would you like to let people know where they can continue the conversation with you and your dog?
Well, the dogs can be reached through me, their representative, at Count Eric Conner, ERICCONNER, over on Insta, or that other site that used to be known as Twitter that we don't talk about as much. But come by, say hi, and I think I'll see you all on Thursday.
Yeah. So, So what you're referring to is what'll be next week's episode of this show. We're recording a conversation about our favorite Marvel Comics storylines, and that's something that you'll see next week, and we'll give you all the programming notes on that show. But yes, behind the curtain, we are recording it on Thursday, but you guys will get to see it next week. Thank you, Eric, and please,
always a pleasure,
as we always reference the Baja Men, please go let the dogs out. So thank you so much to our pal Eric Conner. One thing I wanted to focus on, Brody, was, he's listed as John Walker, she's listed as Yelena. She's not Black Widow, is what this takes away. She's not going to use that name because that is obviously her sister. That's Natasha. Do you think it's just, they're just using names because he's John Walker, he's not Captain America anymore, she's not really Black Widow? Or do you think she will be Black Widow in the MCU going forward?
I think she will be Black Widow eventually. I think they have to write in a plot line as to why, either to pay tribute or because her family gets threatened by knowing her. Yelena it's a good character name, but it's not a superhero name.
Correct.
And it's like Captain Carter always seemed like a bad name.
It's not a great name.
Using your last name when you're a superhero seems dumb to me.
Well, and then the problem is
Fantastic Four did it, but
yeah. Well, the problem is that there's already a Captain Britain. That sort of made that problematic, but she could have also been like alternate timeline Captain Britain or something like that. Let's see. Kame Egan, Thunderbolts looks good, and I think Red Guardian is going to steal the movie. I mean, he really shone in the Black Widow film. And even when we've had David Harbour playing him, like at Comic-Con, we showed some footage of that where he showed up in costume and no one else did. So, I think that, as Mr. Conner was saying, I think that it's a great part for him. Sam Bibley is appreciating that we have an active chat today. I always like having people in the chat who are chiming in, whether they like us or agree with what we're saying. I think that's always fair. So Ivan Soto has this thought. Why put Taskmaster's name in the introductory scene? She's obviously not going to be in the movie that much. We don't actually know. I mean, to Eric's point, Taskmaster and Ghost might not be in it a lot, or they might be in it almost as much as the main characters. We'll just have to, see. I don't know if you have any thoughts about those characters, Mr. Brody. The fact that we're getting, Taskmaster and Ghost, sort of marginal characters from other Marvel films.
Marginal at best. I mean, Ghost was just an annoyance in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Correct.
And so we have no idea what level she's learned her powers and what her motivation is. And as far as Taskmaster, she was terrible in her last appearance. Whenever, I don't forget what it was.
That's Black Widow. Black Widow was the
Black Widow. Right. Yeah, she was terrible. So if you're looking at, I guess they needed more female characters for the movie to balance out the roster, which is fine. But then you had better utilize them early on to give me a reason to care about them, which is why I think there's that fight scene in the warehouse room where they walk in like, we're trapped in here and have to fight. I think that's an opportunity for them to show their powers and highlight them a little bit so that we care about them. Because at this point, you're like, I don't really care about them. I care about the main characters because I saw them all as main characters on shows. So I'm not excited about either one of them, but maybe they do a better job with them away.
My thinking is that with both of those characters, you have a largely blank slate. You use them very marginally, as I said, in the other films. And, Taskmaster's story was, she was basically, hooked up by Brian Cox. I don't even remember what that character's name was. It doesn't really matter, so she's like sort of only become like aware of the world and her surroundings at the end of that movie. And I believe timeline wise, we're like 10 or so years after that, because that was during Civil War. We have the snap and the blip and all that. So I'm not quite sure exactly. So really she could be anything that they want her to be, which I think might help. And Ghost, we really, we knew her father was Yellow Jacket. It was basically all we had. So I guess we'll have to see. He was actually Giant Man. I'm sorry. That was MODOK. It had previously been Yellow Jacket. So yes. So I think it'll be interesting.
She have some new power? Power? She's right. So I think they're gonna up her power level, other than just phasing. And Taskmaster, like you said, will have 10 years of military combat training. She'll be a better fighter. Maybe have more gadgets. Maybe be more like an Iron Man character, possibly. With weaponry or something. So, like I said, I think that first scene of them fighting is going to show you what their abilities are. I think they need to beat the characters that we know, or at least hold their own, so that we have a reason to respect them. Because if they just go in as the characters we knew, then no one's going to care. Like they're in the background of every scene. They don't really show them doing much. Even in this scene, where are they?
Yeah, it looks like they're outside the Waldorf Astoria trying to hail a cab. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong.
Yeah, no. I meant where's Ghost and Task? Is that Taskmaster behind the Yelena?
I think that's Ghost. I think.
Is it Ghost?
But, you know what? I think that it's hard to tell because we again don't know the characters that well. So,
right.
Yeah, and the questions all really come back to just who Bob is.
And my guess is if they have to fight Bob, then somehow Ghost and Taskmaster's powers will play into the plot.
Yeah.
In other words, the phasing is going to be the key to everything. Somehow they're going to make them save the day, so we care about them.
Right. No,
that's my prediction.
I think that you're probably right, and possibly a valiant sacrifice. Daniel Drew chimes in. The whole point is that these undeserved characters get screen time. And Sam Bibley points in that talking about Bucky, he did the Terminator shotgun on the motorcycle trick, and Sam does that all the time. Ladastro says much love for Florence Pugh in her role. I have said about the Black Widow movie that Florence Pugh really stole that movie from Scarlett Johansson. It didn't help that in my mind the character was already dead. So, but I agree. And Cam Egan's theory, Bob is the asterisk. So there's always that. But there's the conversation in there is that they don't like the name Thunderbolts, and keeping in mind that assuming this timeline is after Brave New World, Thunderbolt Ross is the president of the United States at this point. So being called the Thunderbolts might be a little hokey to the people on it. Cam Egan, the team formation reminds me more of the Avengers meeting each other. I think that's interesting. I think that's interesting. And Daniel Drew he references our pal Coy Jandro, who was part of an earlier version of this show over on Popcorn Talk, who I still run into at screenings and cons and things. He thinks these two movies have some kind of connection. I think there will absolutely be a through line for these two movies. I do think that a post credits or mid credit scene in Brave New World will set up events in here. Now it might just be something we've seen in the trailer, but I think that there's something to be said for that. But I don't know. It seems like them coming out so close together, Brody. It seems like there probably is very much a connection between these two films, don't you think?
Well, I'm not sure, because Captain America has been delayed so many times that I don't think they were originally supposed to come out so close together.
That's a great point. This was supposed to come out I think this past summer, which is when Eric was able to get the Happy Meal toys. Yeah, that's true.
So I feel like maybe there's connections to TV shows, or there might be a through line that connects going towards the Avengers movies, because that's how they do things at Marvel. That's how they do. That's how they roll.
Yeah.
But I don't specifically think like Julia Louis-Dreyfus is going to be at the end of Hulk and talk about, well, I think I know the right group of people to handle this problem. I mean, they could do something like that. They in fact, knowing the release was moved, they may go back and film that and add it. Yeah. And that wasn't the original post-credit scene. So as long as the post-credit scenes are better than the Venom 3 post-credit scenes, I think we'll be okay.
Well,
that was a really long wait.
It was a really long wait, and there's no reason to set up Venom 4, I think is what he's saying. Ladastro hopes we get another hallway scene, and I agree with that. Kame's interested on how Taskmaster joins the team because she was the throwaway character from Black Widow. Yeah, absolutely, and I think that it is really wide open. So,
Well, venereal disease recruits all of them. So,
right.
So,
Chris Tuttle points out that Eric's dog barking set off his dog barking, and thinks that makes him a fan of the show.
it makes your dog a fan of the show.
Right, exactly. So, we well, actually, I want to bring this one up from Zena Nova, which I think is the very rare comment from Twitch. We don't get a lot of interaction on Twitch, so we appreciate you checking out the show. Maybe it's the early hour. So Zena Nova says, to be honest, Yelena is a kind of complicated character. I'm interested on the team dynamics, especially knowing that Yelena is not really happy with what the Avengers themselves represented, and now she's a part of a team herself. Well, yeah, I think that she got over her grudge against
Hawkeye
specifically. Yeah. So I think that we'll see. And Ghost, Ivan's reminding me, Ghost Father was not Yellow Jacket or Morpheus. Well, the character is definitely not Morpheus. He's Giant Man, but I know what you're saying. Her father died because of Hank Pym, but I thought that it was that character's daughter. But again, when you're using these characters from movies that now came out quite some time ago, it can be a little bit harder to remember. But yes, Janet helped. So Cammy again, Janet helped Janet Van Dyne, Michelle Pfeiffer helped Ghost from disappearing due to her quantum energy. But is Bill Foster still helping her? Could we get a cameo from Lawrence Fishburne? That is who played her father. That the way that I'm remembering the movie, but Ivan, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying that I could be wrong. So how Ghost is dealing with her powers.
Ghost is the daughter of Elias and Catherine Starr.
Okay.
So who was Elias Starr?
That I don't remember, but I guess Bill Foster was just helping her, and he felt like her power could work for him, So in any case, interesting, Chris Tuttle. I didn't know that this is where you were, but says a few of these superhero movies have been filmed here in Glasgow, yet the council still has no money and has to make cuts. Places turning into Gotham. It's very dicey when you go to the tax credits for filming, because there are a lot of places that do it, and somewhere like New Orleans, it had like a sort of a renaissance at least a decade ago. And there's, like Marvel films most of their stuff in Atlanta, but there are other places that have tried and they don't get their literal bang for their buck. So I'm not really sure how that will all work, but I guess we'll have to see.
Don't forget they filmed the first Avengers movie taking place in New York in Cleveland.
Yeah, well, you didn't have to worry about any people on the streets in Cleveland. All right, Sam Bibley has a comment. I like how David Brody always looks unamused by our comments. He's not impressed with the chat. I don't feel that way, but Sam Bibley mentioned that. I wanted to bring it up,
Let me explain, Sam. I actually like your use of prose and big words, but with the lighting in my studio here, it makes me look pretty good, but it also is hard to read the white background because of the bright light. So I'm actually staring and reading it intently. And it's not that I'm not amused. So the opposite of that. I'm very amused, and I'm paying a lot of attention to the chat, which is why I seem so serious, because I'm reading it and absorbing it.
The only reason I wear glasses on any of these is because I need to be able to read the chat. I actually don't need them to read anything on my screen because the font's big enough. But like if I take it off, I can kind of read what he's saying, but it'll take me twice as long. So yeah, a lot of that is just what we're looking.
Let me put my orange Brooklyn Boys colored glass on. Sam, that's hilarious. See the difference?
Yeah.
No, Sam, I appreciate your commentary. Sorry if it came off that way.
So Daniel Drew saying the scientists working with Pym, Bill Foster, adopted ghosts essentially after they died. Okay, yes.
He is correct.
Thank you, Daniel Drew. I did not remember that part of the story, but I knew that he was like a father figure, Bill Foster was. So that was
he was yeah. What do they call it? Big fathers or
Big brothers and big
Big
sisters.
brothers. Yeah, well,
That
because he was
organization.
Goliath, so he was a big father.
Yeah, he's the biggest. Ladastro points out that when they filmed the first Avengers, Ohio had tax breaks at that time.
Yeah.
And everything's good with Brody and Sam Bibley. I didn't interpret it in a hostile way. I also wear a very serious face all the time. And you're also your representation is Master Shake from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. So
Exactly.
that's all. That's the only way that I can ever think of you.
What a great comment by Sam.
The glasses bit made me laugh. And then Chris Tuttle says, instant hipster costume as soon as you put on those glasses.
Yeah, like that. These aren't Warby Parker. They're actually very inexpensive, but
hipster Brody.
They match the poster. You know, like when Johnny Bravo and Greg Brady became Johnny Bravo because he fit the suit.
Yes.
The glasses match the poster. So
yeah, exactly. So in any case, I wanted to thank everybody in our chat for, these emergency episodes have huge emergencies happening, like new trailers. That's really the only time we do them after things like that. And I wanted to kind of get that in here. And I thought it might be sort of fun to spend a couple moments at the top of the show acknowledging some of the Marvel veterans. Obviously, we could have mentioned James Rhodes. I didn't want that to be a comprehensive list. There's a number more, but that's who I wanted to talk about. So, yes, as I referenced earlier, the next time you see this show on this channel, it'll be a conversation about Marvel, our favorite Marvel stories. It's sort of a crossover episode because we're doing episode 616 of my podcast, The Bladt Cast, and nerds like me know that means that 616 designation is the comic book MCU. So we wanted to highlight our favorite not MCU, but the comic book Marvel universe. We wanted to highlight some of those stories. So Brody, myself, Eric Conner will be there. Our pal Nate Miller is going to join us so that it's not just all boomer picks from people like me and Eric Conner. And then my friend Jeff Winstead, who's been on the show a couple of times, a writer, illustrator in his own right. So there'll be 5 of us on that show. You'll all get to see it next week. And after that, we will be doing a Venom-themed Geekscape book club, which we will announce then. And we will be a part of the Geekscape holiday fundraiser Friday, December 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And that's sort of what's coming up over the next few weeks. And make sure that you subscribe. Smash that like button, y'all, over there on YouTube, and subscribe.
One correction,
you get
though.
your audio podcast. Yes, sir.
It's a Gen X retrospective, as in Gen Excelsior, not Boom.
Yes. No, I know. It's more that to Nate Miller, us, we're just slightly
we're
older
the Gen
than
X.
him.
We're the Gen X men.
We're the Gen X / boomers to him. You know what I mean? That's all I mean. Yeah. And I know. There's the MCU is 199999, but then people refer to it as 616. So
that's been retconned.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion in there. And yeah, like I was saying, hit the like, people. Smash that like button. We appreciate that. And so that's where you'll see us on Geekscape. And if you subscribe, you'll get this show and all the other great shows here on Geekscape. But speaking of great shows, where can we find more David Brody?
You'll find me ignoring the chat on the Brooklyn Boys podcast, which you can get anywhere that you subscribe. And every other episode is a talkback episode, because there's a talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. We hit the microphone and leave us talkbacks commenting on the episode you just heard. So they're like audio commentary, and we devote an entire episode called Slice Time because our listeners are slices. So we do appreciate commentary there, and I promise you I appreciate commentary here as well.
Yes, exactly. We appreciate everyone's feedback, especially when Kemi Egan says something as nice as "Great show as always, guys," and it is as always. We appreciate that. Sam Bibley, I know that. Well, there you go. It's a good question. Sam Bibley wants to know, David Brody, do you do other shows with chat? Because he loves to be in the chat, but I think he would have to use the talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app if he wants to talk to you on that. Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah. This is interesting. Yeah. Daniel Drew says, yes, it has been retconned, but Feige is wrong. He agrees with Aman Fulani, who says that no, it's not 616. Slices of Chicago pizza. Kemi Egan, that's a pure agree to disagree.
That's not a slice. It's a wedge of a pie.
It's like a loaf of bread.
Yeah,
But,
and I love Chicago style pizza, but the fact that you have to put Chicago style in front of it proves that it's not the basic pizza. Because in New York, it's just pizza.
right. Well, I
That's
think
how
in
you know.
Chicago, I believe in Chicago they just call it pizza too. I don't think they say it's Chicago style.
Nah.
And yes, Chris Tuttle wants everybody to hit the like button, or Thanos will bang his shield, or whatever you guys believe. Religion isn't his wheelhouse. Well, thank you, we appreciate it. And in terms of my plugs, Sam Bibley, I saw you in the chat. You and I interacted during the Blind Mike project yesterday, and you said you had fallen off a little bit for the last couple episodes of Who Are These Broadcasters. Well, last week we did about 5 hours and 40 minutes of content over there on the Who Are These Podcasts YouTube channel. We did our regular Tuesday show. We did an election night special that went more than 2 hours. And then on Friday, we did a show that featured both Eric Nagel and Dick Masterson reacting to reactions to the election. So please check that all out. And Sam, I was plugging directly to you, but you got to bounce. So we'll see you next time. But I appreciate that. Anyway, so you can find all of that over there at Who Are These Podcasts. And we're gonna thank you, Chris Tuttle. It was a good week to be into WATB. We did have a lot of fun. We had some different faces. Having Eric Nagel and Dick Masterson is not necessarily what a lot of people would have pieced together, but it worked out really well. So thank you. Appreciate that, Chris. And of course, my personal podcast, The Blattcast, BLADTCAST. And the next episode of this show will be cross-purposed, as it were, as Blattcast 616. That is all the time we have for now. Again, we thank all of our veterans, past, present, and future, for their service, and we thank everybody for participating in the chat. And Sam just made me laugh. I heard the direct plug. No worries. Yeah, look, when you have like 10 people in the chat, you can do personalized plugs for each people. Oh, Kema Egan, you might like this thing that I did. And Daniel Drew, what about this? So in any event, as the great Stan Lee would say, Excelsior!